Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for another webinar. Today we're going to be discussing the Broadcom VCSP program, some of the changes that you need to know about, and how it affects our MSP partners. Some of the topics are going to be centered around the timeline, the key dates that you need to be aware of and start planning around, and we'll dive into some of the details around each of those milestones. First, let me introduce you to our cast members here that are joining us today. You've got myself, I'm head of sales here at OTAVA. I've been here for about 4 years. You've got Mr. Ben Stiles. He is our field CTO in charge of all things related to Broadcom and all of the different aspects of the program. And finally, you've got Mr. Frank Arnett. He is our director of MSP and strategic sales, focusing on our MSP and partnerships with the MSP companies that we serve. Now, why does this matter to you? Broadcom, as you know, has gone through multiple changes and iterations of the program over the last 2 years. Last year in the March and April timeframe was the first big shift for the program, reducing that number of service provider partners from over 4,000 down to somewhere around 500 service provider partners going forward. July of this year, they made another announcement, and we have been providing updates as we have been able to. Going into the new program that was announced in July of this year, there's a further reduced number of service provider partners that you can lean on for your cloud needs within your business. The new program goes into effect on November 1st of 2025. October 31st marks the last day of the program as it wraps up, and that's one of the milestones we'll be talking about today and what you need to do by then. There's also been a frequently asked questions document released by Broadcom to answer a lot of the questions MSPs and VCSPs that are transitioning out of the program may have, and to provide more clarity around what that future path looks like. We have that FAQ available to you if you want to take a look at it. Now, some of the key things that you need to understand about the new program. Let's dive into that first target date, October 31st. October 31st marks the last day of the previous program that we're rolling out of. On November 1st, your new VCF program will include the new partners that are staying in the program. Those are going to be known as Pinnacle partners going forward. OTAVA is one of those Pinnacle partners. What this means for you as an MSP is that you'll have fewer but much stronger partners that are providing VCF as a service for you and your customers. OTAVA was selected as one of this smaller group of partners in the new Broadcom Pinnacle program. A lot of our partners ask why OTAVA is still part of the ongoing program after November 1st. Frank, can you fill us in on some of the details there?
Yeah, it's a question we've been hit with, and quite often during our conversations with MSPs across the country, and it has a lot to do with just the simple fact that we executed at a high level in the previous program, and everything that we are doing from a product level is very focused and in the alley of the direction of where Broadcom's headed with VCF as a service. So it just kind of perfectly aligned with the new program, and just the previous track record that we had from the inception of last year's changes on April 24th of 2024 kind of just, teed us up to just naturally kind of join the new program.
Yeah, that's a good point, Frank. From my perspective, I also see that our importance in this program is really based on our participation and involvement with structuring a lot of the flow and bringing forward some of the visibility into programs and constraints and stuff. So we have been very high in participation back and forth with Broadcom to make this a reality and stuff here. So something that a lot of work went into and something we're proud to be a part of.
Let's jump into the next topic here. So what happens on October 31st? Let's dive into that for a second. On October 31st, all of the previous models around white label VCF licensing will be sunset. That will no longer be an option going forward for MSP and CSP partners. But OTAVA can still service you as a VCSP partner, as a VCF as a service partner. There's just some small differences in what that engagement looks like and how you're able to service your customers. The other thing that happens on October 31st is that any changes to your existing contracts can no longer be made. All of your existing contracts with your white label partner or directly with Broadcom through your distribution channel. Those will stay in place, but no more changes will be allowed. So all your net new business, net new customers have to be transacted in the new model. Ben, do you mind giving us some feedback on what that new model would look like, some of the differences, and what that engagement needs to be from the CSPs and the MSPs?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely an important date for everybody who's participating in the VMware ecosystem, that October 31st date. And part of the reason for that is obviously it's the ending of the legacy program that many partners have been involved with, and the shrinking of that program on the go-forward date of November 1st. So some of the things that we anticipate people having moving parts and pieces on, to your point, you can no longer transact against those legacy models for expansion, for procuring new VMware licenses. So when we get into this overall workflow, the importance is making sure that business leaders understand where they're going to source VMware licensing from Broadcom, and making sure that they've got clear visibility into that alignment. So going forward on that November 1st date, that will be the role of the Pinnacle partners in the VCSP program, including OTAVA. So we will have all of the bases covered in the program going forward for anybody that needs support, licensing, coverage in the new program.
Well, and Ben, it may be good to add as well, when having these conversations with MSPs and CSPs and even former Premier partner or white label partners, the best way to kind of look at it is now, as an end result, you really have two programs at Broadcom as far as partner programs are concerned. And on one side of that foot is you have the reseller channel. There are still resellers that exist, and they have the ability to provide VVF licensing and VCF licensing. And then you have the VCSP Pinnacle partner side, which starts on November 1st, which is going to be the one of the roles that we play, and that's going to be the partner or the program that we're a part of. The big delineation from Broadcom is if you have any type of managed service that you're delivering, any workload that is delivering a managed service, you'd be required to license that with VCF licensing through one of those Pinnacle partners. If you have customers that have an on-premise workload where you've sold them hardware, they actually own the hardware, then they could consume VCF licensing from a Pinnacle partner like ourselves, but they also have access to that reseller channel that still exists to be able to procure VVF or VCF licensing. The big key is that they have to actually own the hardware. They would have to transact. If it is a workload that you yourself are presenting up managed services on, then it would have to be VCF licensing from a Pinnacle partner.
Yep, and Frank, let me stop you there and clarify, because I think this is an important part of understanding the differentiation in the programs, because there's been a lot of change, and I think the market in general is trying to figure out which programs do I even apply to? Does this update apply to my organization? And so one of the ways that I have been using to make this as easy as possible is the line of delineation, thinking about it from a multi-tenancy perspective. So if you are running a VMware stack that needs isolated security, control bounds in between different tenants inside your environment, anything around that multi-tenancy side there for isolating workloads and servicing one particular contract within your business, that's really the line of delineation there. So there are enterprises that are leveraging VCF today, where the VCSP Pinnacle program comes in, or for people trying to deliver services based on VMware to their end customers. So cloud service providers using the VMware stack today need to be aligned to a Pinnacle VCSP partner, for instance, to support that licensing going forward, so that they have the ability and the right from Broadcom to license those workloads and manage a multi-tenant configuration.
That's a great point, Ben. The end user license agreement that Broadcom is rolling out starting November 1st is very clear, very cut and dry. It does not allow for backdoor resell into those environments that are still managed by an MSP or a CSP. All of those environments that have a layer of management from an MSP and are on MSP-owned gear, they all require the new VCF licensing through a service provider like OTAVA. Ben, do you mind diving into license portability, what that future path looks like for our MSP and CSP partners. What are the options that they have available to them going forward?
Yeah, license portability is a big topic because of the contraction in the overall partner ecosystem. So you talked about the program formerly being 400 plus partners. As that ecosystem has shrank and that pool of pinnacle partners is smaller, portability starts to matter a lot for customers because a large swath of the resale industry and the service provider industry are partnered with or purchasing licensing through partners that are not in the Pinnacle program on that go forward date of November 1st, 2025. So if you are in that scenario where you are buying licensing today, and your current service provider or license provider is not in the program in the Pinnacle tier going forward, that means you need to have a way in place to transact there. And so part of the way that Broadcom is making that easier is with their bring your own licensing construct. And that is really to say, if you are with a partner that isn't in the go forward strategy, that partner can't hold you hostage and limit your ability to consume VMware services going forward. So what Broadcom is encouraging partners to do is identify a Pinnacle partner going forward and make sure that you have clear contracted language with them so that your access to the program, the licensing, and the continuation of the products and services you need as a business continue to be available.
So what I'm hearing is that there are options for MSPs and CSPs that already have a contract in place. They're not stuck there. We can help them with that path forward to shift that contract and that the portability of that agreement over to OTAVA or one of the new VCSP partners.
Yep, and the important part there is keeping them whole through that transaction. So this is not a repurchasing of license or a loss of entitlement to those licenses. It's simply leveraging the bring your own licensing program so that those licenses and your accounting for that are tied to a partner that's able to transact with you going past that November 1st date.
I think that'll be helpful to a lot of folks. We get questions all the time around, what can I do? I have this contract in place. I think I'm bound to it. And there are options. We can walk you through all of those things. Frank, do you mind going over what the options are for partners that are departing the VCSP program? Dive into what that looks like, what their path forward looks like, their options for continuing to serve their customers so that they're not risking losing that business, and how OTAVA is enabling that for them.
Yeah, and our whole stance is to kind of be a partner of partners. So we want to enable those folks to be able to continue running their business and growing their business as they were, and be as minimally disruptive as possible. And we do have solution paths that will easily accomplish that. So a perfect example is we have the ability through the license portability just to assume that previous agreement that they were on as a premier white label partner, and then upon assuming that agreement, they will still be the face of the customer. They'll still be able to maintain and manage those relationships they had with their customers, and we're just going to be a vehicle to be able to enable that, is a lack of a better way to say it. At the same time, the only major changes, you would have to add some branding that says powered by whoever your Pinnacle partner is. So in this example, it would be powered by OTAVA when it comes to branding. But ultimately, we're going to keep you the face of the customer, or to the customer. You're going to be that first point of contact with your customers, and continue to move forward and grow your business as you were.
That's a great point, Frank. So while the departing partners can't rebrand OTAVA Cloud, they can definitely continue operating their business the same way, servicing their customers in the same manner, and providing value to their customer base. We are in a position at OTAVA where we're trying to enable our partners, our MSPs, CSPs, to continue operating their business with the least amount of disruption possible.
Yeah, and we're already in conversation with quite a few former premier partners, just because they simply want to get to that end goal of being back at a steady state. So it's better to address it now rather than wait, and get to that steady state and just move forward with planning for 2026 and business as usual.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that A lot of our focus is in education, educating our MSP and CSP partners, the departing partners from the program, on what the terms of the new program look like. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and one of the things we want everybody to avoid is non-compliance. Being compliant with the new program should be everybody's focus in addition to continuing operating your businesses. Frank, do you mind diving into the transfer scenarios? What are a few of the scenarios you've come across with the MSPs you've talked to in what that workflow looks like, how they can continue operating with the least amount of disruption, and what options they have available to them through OTAVA that might be a little bit different from our other competitors?
Yeah, and we try to look at those on a situational basis because everybody's got a little bit of a unique situation. They may be in a situation where they, are halfway through realizing some hardware. In that case, we can use and leverage the bring your own license portability to be able to assume the current agreements that they have, and even if that means on so many cores that they were delivering a managed service on, but then also they had so many cores they were delivering as VCF licensing to other MSPs. Being a former premier partner, we have the ability to take on both of those, allow them to continue being that face of the customer, and continue to operate it as they were. We also have alternatives, like an MSP, for example. If you've already depreciated that hardware, you're looking at a hardware refresh, but you just signed a brand new colo agreement for the next 3 years. Then going to a provider like ourselves where we could provide you a white labeled cloud isn't necessarily doable due to the situation. So we have the ability to work with you to be able to provide you with VCF license so that you can continue to leverage that footprint and that workload to deliver for your customers. And then alternatively, if you are at the end of a life cycle on hardware, and the options to you are kind of much more broad, and it kind of opens up the ability that we see with most of our MSP customers and partners that we work with, is we have the ability to provide you a white labeled, private dedicated VMware based cloud, a multi-tenantized version of that. Disaster recovery as a service type of solution on a VMware based cloud, so that we actually contract with you, we interact with you, your support team interacts with our support team, we can handshake at that hypervisor level, but ultimately you're delivering that to your customer. So you have the ability to add whatever level of markup, what other type of services you'd like to couple in, and then ultimately deliver that to your customer while we're just kind of powering the cloud behind the scenes.
Thanks for that clarification, Frank. That's very helpful. How about in the scenario where a lot of these MSPs and CSPs who are our partners and customers, they service their customer base with a wide variety of products and services. A part of that is generally the cloud piece, the VCF, VMware and Broadcom backed cloud, but they also deliver a lot of other services and products to their customers. What if we have an MSP that wants to retain those relationships, continue servicing their customers, but wants to offload just the cloud component to OTAVA? What would that look like?
It could be, we can deliver this in a multitude of ways, but we can deliver a private cloud in a flexible manner to the point to where not only do you have access to your vCenter, but if you'd like to bring your own firewall, you have the ability to do that. We provide Veeam for backups. If you are a Commvault shop, Rubrik, for example, we would allow you to bring whatever type of solution and attach it to that private cloud that you'd like to bring to it. So we're relatively or extremely flexible on that front. And then even on a service level, right? We expect that you're going to be the one that's going to be the face to the customer. If there were a time that you had a couple professional service engagements that are quite large going on and you need some additional horsepower, you have that ability to reach out to our support team and say, hey, can you please spin up this VM? Can you please make that change? At the same time, your team has the full ability to do it as well. So I think some folks find some value in that because everybody kind of gets a little bit crunched on headcount at times, and it's kind of nice to have that extra horsepower or RPM when you need it.
That's great. So what that means for our partners is that you can leverage OTAVA Cloud. You can still, if you want to, manage vCenter, manage the VMs. You can still provide that level of value and have that level of control in the environment. And remove the compliance concerns, remove the security concerns, offload all of those things onto OTAVA, where we deal with the underlying infrastructure, the licensing, the compliance mechanisms, and ensure that you're still compliant in the new Broadcom program. Now let's talk about the path forward. I think that's really important for everybody to understand. OTAVA is part of the new program. We already talked about that. We are part of the new Pinnacle program that Broadcom is rolling out on November 1st. That means OTAVA can continue servicing all of our existing customers, all of the departed partners from the program, and anybody else in the community that needs Broadcom hosted platforms to provide VCF to their customers. Ben, do you mind going over some of the high level on what that path forward looks like for our customers, what the options are that we're putting in front of the market?
Yeah, absolutely. Frank touched on a little bit about how we are taking a very partnership-focused approach to how we are implementing and supporting this program from our business perspective. So from OTAVA's perspective, we understand all of the different changes that are happening within organizations. There has been a lot of movement requiring people to validate strategies, verify product margins, making sure that you're staying whole as a business. And so we've taken a thoughtful approach to how to help partners transact and navigate this workflow, because with this change comes minor movement within the client environment. So some of the ways that OTAVA is coming forward with this is we have put together a zero cost migration program so that we are there in the trenches helping guide customers and migrate their workloads. So the intent is to be hands-on and proactive with customers, so that as you're making this transition here, that you've got a true partner that's focused on what those milestones are, what the different gates we will do from a delivery perspective, and ultimately getting you back into a steady state operational function within the Broadcom portfolio as quickly as possible. So doing things like that zero cost migration, including replication tool software licensing where applicable, doing co-branded transition strategies for your business, but in an MSP-friendly way, so that you can get in, consume the portions that you need, and get back to your business operations without having to change a significant portion of how you do your business based on a change in the Broadcom portfolio.
That's a good point. And we try to, I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but everybody's situation is unique, and everyone's evolution to adhering and evolving to the new program is also going to be unique due to that. So we're taking that heavily into effect when we have conversations, and a lot of times a conversation with an MSP has it's multifaceted, right? Not only are they delivering up cloud services, but they're also managing on-premise workloads. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. So we've kind of talked through those as separate items, and we've helped educate a lot of MSPs that on that on-prem workload, VBF licensing may be a better situation or maybe a better choice. So therefore, we would advise you to go that direction toward a reseller route to service those customers. But your managed service stack that you're delivering, we can help you there, and then we start to kind of delineate those two paths. And on that VCSP Pinnacle partner path of licensing their managed service workloads, goes back to kind of the creativity and the flexibility that we're bringing to the table to make it easier for folks, because we realize it's just not it hasn't been the easiest landscape to navigate, and we're trying to simplify that as much as possible.
Yep, I think one of the biggest differentiators there, Frank, is that we're geared up to execute today. Right, we already did the due diligence, the work on the program adherence. I talked about that close partnering with Broadcom through the transitions of this programs, and that means that we are out in front of the items needed in order to actually transact this stuff. So a lot of what I'm encouraging people to do in the market is to validate their go forward strategy and start to explore some of those options. So one of the things that I'm constantly talking about is whether or not you have the ability to extend past that March 2026 or 2027 timeframe that represented the end of that 3-year contract that was signed last year with customers. So being able to do things like put paperwork in place that carries licensing and access to that licensing past that date is an important proof point there as our ability to execute and move forward so that you can solidify your strategy and not have to revisit this on a weekly basis.
To add to that point, Ben, we're hearing a lot from MSPs that customers are now very aware of the changes themselves, and it's driving some a little bit of fear and uncertainty with their customer bases. So the faster you can get to a resolution point, the quicker you'll be able to kind of put those fears to rest for your customers and ultimately just get back to growing the business.
So now this brings us to the Q&A section of our webinar. We've got a handful of very good questions from our audience. Let's dive right in. So first one here is, as a non-renewing partner, can I purchase VMware licenses from another reseller to continue offering my cloud services to my customers? The answer is very clearly no. If you are providing cloud services to your customers in any fashion, you cannot buy licensing from a reseller. You have to consume that product and that offering from one of the remaining VCF partners in the program, OTAVA being part of that Pinnacle program. You don't have an option to continue servicing your customers outside of that particular program. We can walk you through all of the details and help you identify which one of your relationships fall under that category and which one of them don't.
Excellent, Ben. Yeah, I'll take the next question here. We've got one that says, what does license portability mean for me and my customers, and how is OTAVA supporting this today? I talked a little bit earlier on about the licensing portability and the intention of that program helping ease the need for movements while term-based contracts are in place today. So we are continuing to support that from a license portability perspective. So we take that a step beyond the support of that and really turn that into meaningful action there. So when we talk about our overall support, it's the ability to come in, evaluate your existing agreements, the programs that you were in previously, refine that configuration, give you a go forward strategy, and then also help you execute that. So navigating that side on the legal side is something you want to make sure you've got dialed in as well. And that's something that OTAVA is going to be in the trenches with you on. We want to make sure that you have it right, that you have the visibility, you understand the outcomes for your business and stuff there. So when it comes to license portability, we are leaning into that program and also helping support and guide along the way.
Thank you, Ben. That's really important information. We'll take the next question here. Can I rebrand an authorized VCSP partner service if I want to keep my brand front and center with my customers? There's a pretty clear answer there in terms of how the EULA from Broadcom is laid out in the new program. You cannot rebrand a partner's cloud product to be your own, but you can co-brand. We can work with you on all the details around what that co-branding looks like, how to keep your relationship and your logo front and center to your customers so that they understand you are still their MSP, you are still their quarterback in the relationship. But you cannot completely rebrand a VCSP partner service to your own. Ben, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. How do I ensure that my customers don't experience downtime or disruption when my VCSP status ends? We touched on this one in the conversation here, but really making sure that you have an agreement with a go-forward VCSP Pinnacle partner past that November 1st date is going to be the first gate to making sure that you're able to still transact and continue with that stuff. So Broadcom has committed to the program so that things like your access to the partner portal and tools will not get disrupted as you make that transition period. If you execute things like bring your own licenses, there are ways within that program to make sure you stay whole from a usage meter tracking perspective and access to partner provided tools and resources as well.
I think the important thing to keep in mind there, I know we've said it multiple times around that October 31st timeframe. I think one of the most important things that we have to continue reiterating to folks around how to reduce the risk for disruption and downtime to their customers is you need to make that decision early. Right now, we're coming up against the end of October pretty quickly, and there's going to be a lot of folks that are waiting to the last minute to make those decisions. The sooner you can make that call on what your path forward looks like, the sooner you're going to be able to avoid and mitigate the risk for any of that downtime for your customers.
Does that require any money spend or obligation on the client side to designate that path forward, Ben, or is that something that they can do independently to make sure that they at least have a transaction capability going forward?
Our MSPs customers shouldn't see any sort of impact. They shouldn't see any sort of impact as long as the MSP or CSP is following the right path to get to that end result for the next iteration of the program. In terms of what OTAVA is doing to help our partners, we have a program in place right now that enables our MSP and CSP partners to gradually migrate those workloads over to OTAVA over a few months so that they reduce the risk of downtime. And during that period of time, we are offering all of the OTAVA services, whether it's the infrastructure, the licensing, the backups, the underlying components that get all of it to operate in the way that it does, all of it at no cost to our MSP and CSP partners to make that gradual shift as painless and least disruptive as possible, including the cost impact on the business.
Thanks for that clarity. Appreciate that.
Yep. Frank, you want to take the next one?
Yeah. So if I transition my customers to OTAVA, do I still get to stay involved as their managed service provider? And that is absolutely the case. And let me clarify. We will contract with you and we will partner with you, but we are never going to engage your customer. We're only going to engage you. So that interaction happens very specifically between our team and your team. We'll be providing any level of support that you need for VMware. At the same time, that is as far as our communication would ever go. You are still the face of the customer. You are still the one that is managing and maintaining that relationship and continuing to nurture that. We are absolutely hands off and would only interact with you.
Yeah. Gentlemen, I'm going to pose this next question to both of you since it's more in the realm of mergers, acquisitions, and transitions. So there are businesses that we're talking to on a regular basis that are looking for alternatives to Broadcom. People are evaluating the ecosystem and really making sure that they're doing right by their businesses and stuff. So we've got this question, which is, do I need to sell my entire entity for a transfer, or can I move a book of business to an authorized VCSP like OTAVA?
Yeah, that's a question we get often. A lot of our competitors are structuring these relationships to essentially absorb that entire book of business or go through an M&A transaction and acquire entire businesses that were in the program and departing. The way that OTAVA is structuring our relationships with our MSP and CSP partners is giving optionality. Obviously, one option is to continue servicing your customers, and OTAVA is in the background as your cloud provider of choice for all of your Broadcom workloads. The other option, which I think is what this question is leading to, is if I want to offload that book of business, do I have to sell my entire company, or can I just shift the responsibility for the cloud environment? If I'm reading the question correctly. Frank, do you want to dive into that a bit?
Yeah, that's the way I'm interpreting the question as well, and that is absolutely the case. Is we can work with you as just to simply transfer that book of business, at least the portion that it requires VCF licensing, while you continue to maintain the rest of the business. So it kind of goes back to the thought process that we're ultimately looking to build long-term partnerships with folks and enable them. So right now, I don't think is probably the most advantageous time for an MSP or CSP to be looking down an M&A alley. To me, that would be the path that would be more intriguing myself to be able to continue to grow the business, transfer a small portion or book of that over, and then even to the previous question that I just answered, you're still going to be the face to the customers. You're still going to be the one that's maintaining those relationships.
Yep, that's a very important point, and a way that our MSP and CSP partners can continue providing value to their customers and owning those relationships. The next question here is, why was OTAVA chosen as a Pinnacle partner, and what does that mean for MSPs working with you? We get this question quite often. particularly from partners that are departing the program, and they want to know what's different about OTAVA. Why is OTAVA still part of the program? It's a question that comes up every single week on multiple calls. What Broadcom is looking for and continues to communicate to the Pinnacle partners that remain part of the program is the value that each of the remaining partners brings to each of the customer relationships. There's a certain amount of value that Broadcom is looking for in each of those relationships that we have with our MSPs, our CSPs, our enterprise customers. And OTAVA is not just a cloud provider. We bring a tremendous amount of value in all of the other things that we do for our customers as well. When it comes to security and business resiliency, cyber resiliency, all of the other aspects of servicing those relationships from a technology standpoint. That's one of the important things that OTAVA brings to the table that I think Broadcom has been looking for in their partners going forward as well.
Yeah, Ben, and I think another proof point that we've got along this way is really recent market recognition for those types of things as well. So from a partnership perspective, it's an area where we have made sure with market disruptions to lean in with our key partners and make sure that we are secure and firm in those relationships and therefore able to extend that to our customers as well. So I think we've got a nice leg up there. Some of the things that we've seen so far this year, we're being named MSP 501's MSP of the Year and Veeam's North American Partner of the Year as well. So some accolades from major partners and part of that virtualization ecosystem that Broadcom's participating in as well. So our focus on partnership is not specific to Broadcom here. It's something that we take seriously across the board. And so not as surprising when you look at it from that perspective that we are part of the program going forward.
Those are all very good points, Ben. We strive to make sure that we are the most up-to-date that we possibly can be on the changes in the Broadcom program. And in turn, we strive to make sure that we are first educating all of our MSP, CSP, and enterprise customers so that they can make a decision that makes sense for their business. I'll read out the next question here if you want to take it, Ben. It's what is included in the OTAVA zero-cost migration program, and what's the actual value behind the estimated savings that we mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. Savings are something that we're bringing to the table as part of this zero-cost migration program. And really what that focuses on is understanding that businesses in a transitionary period did not plan for overlapping costs, the pausing of a business to do a migration and moves. And so what we put together is this $0 cost migration program that includes the basic things for the underlying compute that represents your core commit within the VCF program, also bringing licensing and replication tools. I talked about our close partnership with Veeam, for instance, and the ability to bring that forward as a tool to replicate workloads and make this as seamless as possible. So doing workload migrations is something we are doing on a regular basis. There might be 5 or 6 of them in flight as we speak on this phone call within our organization right now. And so what we want to do is make sure that we've got a outlined, very easy and consumable approach to taking that migration and including the corresponding tools that are going to make that a easy and streamlined experience.
All right, we got our last question from the audience. This one for you, Frank. How does OTAVA's MSP focus model differ from traditional infrastructure providers, and what kind of handholding can we expect during the migration?
That's a great question. It goes back to the fact that we do have quite a few different paths available to you. In addition to that, who you work with to solve this problem and put the right type of solution in place will be with you for the duration of the relationship. So we don't have a situation where you're working with one specific team to build the solution, and then after that point you transition to a different team that would be your main point of contact. That team that is helping you build the solution is going to be the team that you're going to interact with for the duration of the relationship. So makes it easy to be able to just make a phone call, pick up the conversation where you left it off the last time, and then the migration itself, once we build the solution, we all come to an agreement, we stay involved in addition to throughout that process, just to ensure that we have a tight level of communication, and then make that transition over to a steady run state, and we are still with you, stay in lockstep after that point.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for this webinar to go over some of the important details around the changing VCF program. As you know, we are here to help. Everybody on the OTAVA side is here to answer any questions you have and help you paint that path to what happens after October 31st. The key date that you need to keep in mind is October 31st, 2025. You've got to decide what you're doing to continue doing business starting on November 1st. And the sooner you make that decision, the better position you're going to be in order to cause the least amount of disruption or none at all to your customer base. Visit otava.com/Broadcom-VCF for any additional details. There's lots of details we have on our website, including some of the recorded webinars. And if you do want to discuss any of this in more detail with one of our experts, fill out the form on the website. We'll point you right to the expert that's in your particular region, or Frank or Ben or myself, and we'll all be happy to help you figure out what the next iteration of your business is going to look like when it comes to Broadcom and cloud. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Ben and Frank, thank you for joining us on this webinar today to help educate everybody on what the go-forward path looks like with Broadcom. And thank you to our audience for joining us today. We're here to help you with any of your Broadcom needs going forward.